you think that the youth in Singapore are very aware of social issues outside of Singapore, like poverty?
Oh, I think that a lot of young people in Singapore lead very, very confined lives. You know, they have very small aspirations. I don't think that, you know, a lot of them pay too much attention to what's going around, you know, what's going on around them. I mean, apart from things of immediate concern like, you know, results, school exam results, you know, CCA, that kind of thing, what their friends are doing, peer pressure. But apart from that, I don't think that, you know, they're too socially conscientious. I never get the impression. Which is why if you actually monitor the trajectory of students in, say, in NUS, for instance, from, say, the 60s to the 90s, in the 60s, people would actually, you know, organize a mass sit-in to protest against the Vietnam War and etc. The students, the union then, was a lot more active, campaigning, you know, against particular social issues and so on. By the time we came to the 70s, people were more driven by their own ambitions. And by the time we get to the 80s, you know, I just find that students these days, they see the university almost as a kind of an educational assembly line. They're here to get a degree at the shortest possible time, because now with the modular system, you can do any number of modules, you can do the summer term, etc. So they just want to do well, they want to get good results within the shortest period of time. So they're not too bothered by what's going on around them, apart from what has immediate impact on their lives.
Do you think this has a link to why Singaporeans are seen as not that outspoken? They are more quiet, reserved in a sense.
Oh yes, the Singaporeans are generally very indifferent to you know, things around them. And I think the young people these days aren't particularly interested in things around them.
Just to backtrack a bit,
yeah.
Previously you were saying that students from the 60s, they are more
involved in social issues, yeah. Very, So they're not so apathetic. These days they're a lot more apathetic.
So what do you think is the what do you think is the main cause of this change?
The apathy.
Yeah.
I wish I knew, you know, because it has to do with a certain self-centeredness which the current generation seem to suffer from, a certain self-centeredness. Because you see, this apathy also spills over into other areas of their lives. Like, for example, by being not interested in social issues, they're also not interested in other people. And being less considerate towards other people, they also seem more selfish and self-centered. Like, when I first started teaching, you know, in the early 90s, Teachers' Day, students would always send cards and, you know, they'll take the trouble to wish you. But the generation I noticed after the 80s don't do that. And in fact, a lot of them see teachers as purely functionaries. One of my colleagues had a very, very bad experience. She came back on a Saturday because she lives in Kenvale. So she came back on a Saturday for a consultation. Saturday consultations are generally no because, you know, Saturday is not a working day. She came back for a Saturday consultation with this student who took up about 2 hours of her time. She slowly explained all the concepts, etc. And then the student thanked her. And then the student said, no, the student said, have you had lunch? And she said, no. And then she said, well, thank you very much. And then the student said, oh, but then of course you're paid to do this. It's that qualification, you see, that there's no longer that very kind of personal relationship. They see you as purely functionary. You are there because you've been hired by the university to do a job. They're a client. They see themselves as your clients. So I don't know when the self-centeredness started from. Some people, sociologists have come up with very interesting ideas. Some people say that it started with the latchkey syndrome. When both parents started working, the kid is left with the maid, whom the kid will order around. The parents shower the kid with a lot of material things in lieu of the parental attention. And the kid then grows up just, you know, being very self-centered. That's one theory. The other theory is that these days people just generally have shorter attention spans, and because they have shorter attention spans, they can't even keep abreast of their own desires and their own concerns. You know, how can they be preoccupied with the concerns of other people? You know, they call this the MTV generation, right? That you notice a young person in front of a TV. You know, you notice your grandmothers when they watch a Cantonese opera, they're like complete kind of enthralled by the program. But these days, people zap from channel to channel, 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there. Nothing ever captures their attention, so that's also the reason why they don't read as much. Our relationship with our students these days, in the last 20 years that I've been here, very, very different. The early students will be the ones who will still keep in touch. You know, the people who are now in their 40s with children. Chinese New Year, they'll call me. But I don't expect the current batch of students, especially the last few years, you know, from, that means those born after 85, 86 would be what, 80, oh, if it's 86, they'll be about 24, yeah. 86, 87, you know, I don't expect them to get in touch. They probably won't be in touch with you. But they're also surprisingly user-friendly, which means that they're not in touch with you. They don't bother to thank you. But 5 years later, if they need a testimonial from you, they will suddenly give you a phone call and say, hello, you know, I'm Sean. Do you remember me? I used to be in your class. You know, I'm thinking of doing graduate work in the US. Can you give me a testimonial? Completely unabashed. That's another theory, which is, of course, you know, which I don't know whether I should voice, but people feel that Singapore has been so draconian and oppressive as a society that people are not encouraged that it's always much safer to keep quiet. You know, so that the youth grew up with this kind of culture, the keep quiet culture, that you don't want to get into trouble with the authorities. You know, they might come down on you very hard if you express your opinion, or if you write to the foreign pages, you might be blacklisted. So consequently, growing up with this kind of culture where it's better to remain silent than that is whether the youth are a byproduct of the kind of society they were raised in. But I think a lot of the apathy, from my point of view, judging from the students I've taught, has to do with, you know, the way that our society has evolved, and, you know, as you say, the taking for granted, because they're generally less concerned about other people. If you know, it's not going to benefit them in some way, don't expect them to do it. I mean, years ago, I could still get my theatre students to go and perform to terminally ill children in NUH, because it's a good thing, and they believe in it. And 2 days ago, I ran to one of them in Orchard Road, and I said, oh, I remember you. You were one of the students who organized a troupe and performed before these, you know, cancer-stricken children in NUH. And I said, what are you doing now? And she said, I'm with Eton House. You know, Eton House, that prep school for preschool children. And she enjoys that, you see. But these days, they will always ask, what is it? You know, what is it for me? If there's nothing in there for them, they're not interested in volunteering. Very different, very, very different, yeah.